You're watching Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. It's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for anyone in the financial services and wealth management industry. Learn more today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I'm your host, Frank LaRosa, and I look forward to a great conversation today. I'm honored to have two great guests with me today. Former clients, not former, but clients and friends. I consider them both my friends, Brian McCarver and John Freeman from Stonebridge Financial Group out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. What's up, gentlemen?
Good morning. Morning.
Good morning. We appreciate you guys wearing jackets for me. That's very nice of you. Thank you. So, I for those that are listening, I've worked with both Brian and John for several years. Helped them move their practice. We really did a lot of due diligence, made the right decision. But what impressed me the most about you guys was the fact that you have such different personalities and you've made it really work well together. And that's a unique thing. Especially in my 25 years in the business, I've seen so many guys come to me as a manager, and they liked playing golf with each other. They liked going to lunch at the local pub together, and they thought it was a great idea to come together as partners. Meanwhile, that wasn't right for them. It ended up sort of ended up in a divorce, right? And neither party was happy, and then guys would leave the office because they couldn't stand to see each other. So I wanted to just really talk about that topic and how you guys have been able to make it successful and grow a multi-million dollar practice over the years. So let me just start by first having you introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about how you started.
All right. I'm John Freeman. First of all, Frank, wearing a jacket was not an easy decision today, because I'm accustomed to T-shirts and shorts and my COVID beard and haircut. So I've really gotten cleaned up for this.
I appreciate it. I'm honored.
You owe me one, bud. And, I have to honestly say that getting back to the office has been wonderful. I actually missed this guy. But I moved to the area in January of 2002, originally from the New York area. Brian was already part of the existing practice when I joined. So that was January 2002. It was shortly after 9/11. I had already been looking at becoming a financial advisor at that point. I was more on the analytical side, working for Prudential at the time. But, after 9/11, my wife and I evaluated where we wanted to live. It was not in Manhattan. And we were thrilled to join Brian and the group in January of 2002. It's about it. Married, two children, two teenage girls. So life during COVID with two teenage girls has been quite interesting. And that's about it.
Awesome. And Brian, you have a really interesting background, right? Graduate from West Point Military Academy, so that was really interesting. That's why you guys are I'm just amazed about your different personalities. So,
yeah, I'm Brian McCarver. I actually grew up in this rough area, but spent a decade of my life after graduating high school. I went to college at a military academy and then spent a little bit over 5 years in the Army. For a number of reasons, my wife and I decided to leave the Army and come back to the area. She was interested in living in this area, and I tried to find employment in this area. And what better job to do than start a financial advisory practice in your hometown? I was always intrigued and interested in working in finance, although I was a mechanical engineer major. But moving back to this area was easy. But starting in the business obviously is a challenge and hard work, but it was good to do it in your hometown with your parents, my in-laws, some extended family on her side. So it was just natural for us to come back. We have 3 boys. I just married one of my boys away. He got married about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2 more at home. And, we're back to work. It's been an interesting 90 days.
Totally.
But, the energy and the level of activity is picking up again, which is good for us, but it's also indicative of the economy in general. So we look forward to getting back on track here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You mentioned about different backgrounds, Frank. As you know, I went to your son's college, Bucknell. While Brian was taking life quite seriously at West Point, I spent about 4 years sleeping on a couch somewhere, waking up with hangovers. So it is an unlikely partnership for sure, especially coming to central Pennsylvania from working in Manhattan.
Yeah, I definitely.
But we love it though.
Whenever I think of partnerships that work, you guys come to mind. So, can you just briefly describe? You guys also, one of the things I find fascinating is that you have a again, just in just a few minutes, just describe the practice itself. So, what is it? What do you guys do in production? And you have a couple of different aspects of your business that I think are unique.
Yeah. So. Right now, I guess the way we would call it is an ensemble practice. I mean, we really don't focus at all on individual production. We're all working together. We all have very clear and distinct roles. We have a retirement plan consulting team that consults to roughly maybe 160 plans, a few $100 million in assets. We have several advisors more focused on the retail side of the business. We have a full-time portfolio analyst. We have a junior portfolio analyst, a full-time trader, full-time practice manager, and we're even managing some assets for other advisors who are also affiliated with the same firm. So, our practice is about roughly maybe 1.1 billion. I guess that number has been going up and down quite a bit recently.
Yeah, right. Depends on the day.
Roughly 1.1 billion in assets. And we do have, an office in central Pennsylvania, but looking to expand outside of Harrisburg to also Lancaster and York areas sometime in the near future.
Awesome. Great. So let's sort of dive into this, the whole point of this topic, and that is, how did you guys make this thing work well together? So, I think that maybe just describe, and you sort of just mentioned it in terms of West Point and Bucknell, and for those of you that don't know Bucknell on the that are listening to this in the central part of the country, Bucknell is a small school in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and there's really not much to do there other than party. But it's so they call it a little Ivy. So he's being humble by saying that he partied all the time. He's a pretty smart individual if he got into Bucknell University. So. But in terms of, your personalities, how have you been able to work so well together with such a different personality style, right? And really, what's worked best with that style, and maybe then go into what has been what are the biggest, or what has been the biggest challenge with the different personalities that you have? And either one of you can answer. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with that. The partnership, we had the benefit of forming our partnership before we even owned anything. John and I were junior advisors on a team consulting to some fairly large clients. So we were sort of on the outside looking in. So we were sort of hand in hand in the sense that we had to make what we were doing work prior to becoming owners of this practice. So we had the benefit of that. Broadly speaking, that's how we started working together. And then as time went on, we became owners of the practice by buying out the previous owner. But I think what it comes down to, the core of things, is that we are different in the way that we think. I'm more introverted, sort of a planner, long-term thinker type person. John's more extroverted and social and relational. But to work together, we both need to realize that it's the pieces together that make a practice work. You can't be a practitioner who's introverted and think you're going to be able to network and attract clients and build relationships. And you can't be a relationship guy that just, lets, day-to-day stuff happen without any methodology and organization and, systems and workflows and that type of stuff. So you have to recognize that the two backgrounds complement each other, and then respect the fact that each background and each methodology is an important component of succeeding together. I completely convinced that nobody in life succeeds on their own. There's somebody who along the way has contributed to everybody's success. And John being part of that, but there's other people who helped me along the way as well. So if you start with that mindset that even though you have some accomplishments, they aren't really ever individual accomplishments. They're always group accomplishments. So it's really just compromise and respect and understanding that, yin and yang go together. The world isn't full of yangs that succeed. So you just got to be able to figure out how they add together to make three as opposed to two.
Yeah, if it's sort of like a marriage. I mean, if I was exactly the same as my wife, my kids would be dressed in body armor and they'd be wearing 15 face masks right now. We Brian and I are very much the same. When we have a problem, we almost always come at it from entirely different points of view and angles. It's really remarkable how often we disagree on things, but it's never, negative disagreement. It's just we're just viewing it from different angles, different lenses. I would say that we benefited greatly from working together for quite a while prior to forming our partnership. That gave us the ability to understand each other's work ethic, to trust each other. Candidly, if we just met each other on the street and formed a partnership without having that first, I'm guessing we wouldn't have had the same level of trust ultimately. That's what it is. We're both, we're both heading in the same direction. We both, frankly, I think have, and this is the most important thing, I think the way we look at the business from a big picture is almost exactly the same. Our business ethics, I'd say, are identical. Maybe nothing else, but standpoint, the way we handle our employees, the way we handle our clients, I think it's nearly exactly the same. We do benefit, though, from having a practice manager who brings a third point of view who we trust implicitly. If we have a disagreement that we can't come to a conclusion on, we usually put it out to the group. We have a lot of long-term employees, including a couple that were with us prior to forming our partnership, were with the previous practice, and we truly value their opinions as well.
Got it. So when you that's awesome. You cover a couple of things there. So when you talk about coming at a situation where you really disagree on some things, sort of, or you not disagree, maybe you disagree, but you're coming from two totally different angles. Can you maybe describe a situation where you guys were like on total opposite ends of the decision, and how did you come to a compromise on that? Because there's got to be things where, I think that we've all known each other now for however I don't know, 4 or 5 years now at this point, something like that. So Brian and I are very much like similar personalities, right? And so it's, we're like guys that are like sort of set in our ways, right? And maybe you're not, John. Can you describe a situation where that you were really like on opposite ends of a decision, and how did you work to come to a compromise?
Yeah, I'll advance something that John just said. I think at the root of how we look at our practice is that there's really a hierarchy of who needs to be focused on and addressed in terms of the needs of satisfying people who are part of this practice. And collectively, John and I believe that our clients always come first. There's no question about clients first. People say it. I know people mean it. I know people do it, but we practice it day in, day out. Clients always come first. And then second, and surprisingly, maybe this is different than other practitioners, is employees come second. In large part because when you hire high quality employees and you treat them fairly and well, and you respect them and ask for their input and have them own some of the decisions that we make as practice owners, they respect that, they enjoy it, they like it, they get compensated well, and so on. And then last comes really ourselves, is if you create that hierarchy of clients first, employees second, owners last, it really becomes it's not so much that those priorities ever interchange. It's just at what point do you really prioritize one over the other, or not prioritize, but it's in that that separation between clients and employees, or employees or owners, that really some of the differences surface. And we've just found ways to talk through it and have a third party, which is Cody Gaiman, our practice manager, help us really look at things from both sides. John's very compassionate and very interested in helping people, and always delivering to people above and beyond what is traditionally expected for an owner to deliver, either to a client or to an employee. And I'm always not concerned, but I'm always interested in precedence. If you do something as an owner and you create a precedence for doing it, it creates a potential problem down the road when a similar circumstance occurs with an employee or another client. So, I'm thinking of one where we actually, in the past year, we had an employee who had discovered that a family member became sick, very sick, and we didn't have a policy or a methodology for that employee to essentially care for her family member while still remaining to be employed. We resolved the difference of trying to address her needs by delivering essentially an equivalent policy. We basically built a policy that was around the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, that even though we aren't subject to it, we created a policy that didn't exist beforehand to allow this person to work in a capacity and stay employed with us in a capacity until such point, or in a manner in which she could actually help her family member. So, that was I'd say in the past year, one of the circumstances in which we disagreed on how to approach it, and we ended up resolving that methodology with the help of Cody, and just are talking through the process.
Yeah, and I think, and Brian's not being fair to himself. He deals with employees with a tremendous amount of passion as well. But my knee-jerk reaction, I think that's really it. I mean, Brian's sort of the thinker. I'm sort of the doer. I work at a crazy frenetic pace 99% of the time, and sort of ready, shoot, aim, and he is ready, aim, shoot. So, while and frankly, if I made all the high level business decisions, there wouldn't be a business. That is the truth. Or at least there wouldn't be profit.
Right.
Everybody else would be making money except for either. So
501c3, right?
Yeah. So that is, I mean, my knee jerk reaction is usually to not worry about policies and procedures and just, do what you can to help people. And Brian wants to help people, but also wants to have a viable business. And frankly, what I've learned over the years is, and this is dealing with employees who aren't productive. This is dealing with policies and procedures that aren't productive. I've learned a lot from Brian because if we didn't develop these things, these policies, these procedures, if we had set a new precedent for each and every employee and client who walked in the door, it'd be problematic, and my brain just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, I remember a conversation that Brian and I had when we were in Oklahoma. Well, I don't want to get into the exact details, but it was a situation where you guys clearly had a difference of opinion on something. Brian, I don't know if you remember that. It had to do with dogs.
Yeah. Dogs in the office.
Right. And just laughing because you guys were it was basically, I got to see through Brian or hear through Brian how you guys sort of work through, but how just that's when I realized, I think, from how much different your processes in decision making were, right? And so just seeing that. When you talk about, so if we can just get into a little bit about, and I know you have Cody, so some of this, but I also know that Cody, has only been with you for a few years now, right? And so,
right.
How do you deal, because of your personalities, like how do you make decisions on who deals with the employees? Do the employees come to you, or to you, John, or to you, Brian, or do they steer away from Brian? Right? It's like the good parent, bad parent. Like I have a really interesting question. I need a policy. Breaking a policy or whatever, I'm going to go to John because he's just going to say yes. If I go to Brian, he's going to ask me all sorts of questions.
You nailed it. You hit the nail on the head. I'm not sure I'm allowed to speak with employees anymore without Cody and Brian monitoring every word that I'm saying.
Yeah, and the fact that we're a two-person partnership, we needed a sort of a go-between, and that's what our practice manager offered, is that he was the point of sort of access or entry into how we would make a decision. So employees now communicate directly with him. So it resolves some issues because they never get to us, but then if it needs to get to us, then the three of us sit down and just talk through it. And it's not so much that John always says yes and I always say no. It's just like, if we say yes, we have to think about these three things in the future. Like, a yes is okay, but let's make a yes contingent upon, these ideas. And actually, right now, the three of us, Brian, John, and Cody, are working through the topic of working from home. I happen to believe that full-service financial advisors need to greet and meet people face-to-face and shake hands and answer, phone calls in your office and do that stuff. And recognizing this COVID pandemic is changing, how we operate, et cetera. I mean, thank goodness this pandemic hit in 2020 and not in 1960 when we couldn't work from home. So we've largely been able to work from home, but I still believe that even though we can functionally do things at home, our clients expect us to be here face-to-face interacting with them. So we're working through that policy, and that work through has been 30-some days of conversations between Brian and John. And we sent a survey monkey to our employees, and we asked for their written feedback, and we're searching for an answer that we satisfy, number one, our clients, as I said before, but number two, employees, and the technology that we have allows people to work from home, but isn't necessarily what we should do and what our clients want. So
yeah, it's a tricky topic. I mean, I remember several years ago, Brian wanted did not want our staff to have laptops. He didn't want them to feel like they needed to bring their work home with them, which really does make sense. Like you're here.
I'm sorry, hold on. Did you just say Brian didn't want them to feel like they needed to bring work home?
Right, which was good. Which is nice. Cody came in here at 24 years old and said, "What are you guys doing? You're crazy. Everybody needs to have laptops and the ability to work from home just in case." So, having a third party with helping out these two old guys figure out technology is really, really helpful. And, that third party, I mean, he is, by the way, we've found and employed some magnificent millennials. So my opinions about millennials have changed. They're really valuable to our business. But having that third voice is really good. From his perspective, working from home is much easier. And we're actually, I think, together struggling with that topic a little bit. But my knee-jerk reaction to most everything is just get people what they want and avoid conflict. And that's not the right reaction. And one thing I learned really over the past several years is that employees want structure. They want rules. They want structure. They don't want everybody operating differently because it leads to a lot of resentment. It really does. And keep your good employees happy, you do have to have some rules and some structures behind the practice. So I think it's a learning experience for all of us.
Awesome.
Yeah. I haven't historically learned anything about structure or rules, having attended the military academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't know anything about that, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So this was awesome because we sort of covered a lot of the things, different questions and answers, and the questions I was going to ask you. Tell me a little bit about, again, I was going to ask you about hiring and firing, but you sort of answered that in terms of, who. Well, let me ask you that specifically. No one ever likes to, hiring and firing. Let's talk about that specifically, right? How do you guys make a decision on, and have you ever made a decision where one person just loved somebody and the other person didn't, right? And maybe before Cody, because I'm probably sure Cody now plays a much bigger role in that process. But how did you overcome where you guys just felt differently about somebody, whether you were hiring somebody or letting somebody go?
Well, one thing, and I keep going back to this hierarchy, is employees are number 2 on our list. When it comes to the performance of an employee, we both seek the input of not just ourselves, because we're buried in our day-to-day interaction with our own clients. We seek the interaction of the people that interact with that. We seek the feedback of the people who interact with that employee, and to know whether or not they're doing their job right or wrong. So we value and we want other people to say, yeah, that person's an A player or a C player, or they're a C player and here's why. So I don't know that necessarily we've ever had an exact difference on a termination. I would tell you that broadly speaking, when the performance of an employee gets to the point where it's starting to impact the flow of the team, you really need to quickly make a decision as to whether that team member should be or should not be part of the team. And I'd say that might be something, if we had to do it slightly differently, we might have altered the time frame in which we made some of those decisions. But it was never, let's keep this person, let's not keep this person. It was we sort of didn't make very rapid decisions on replacing. I'll speak quickly on hiring. Again, I keep going back to this hierarchy. Employees deserve to be paid well, and finding high quality employees require them to be paid well. I think one of the things that we have done well is we have hired very good employees, and we pay them well, because and pay is a component of compensation, benefits, PTO, all that stuff matters. But it's costly to replace employees that aren't working. So if you get A players on your team and you have to pay for them a little bit more, it helps in the long run because you don't have disruption. And then you have people who buy into the methodology and the practice and how we operate, and then they become long-term vested, people in doing the work that we want to do with our clients.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I mean, and I think Brian feels the same. There's never been an employee who walked through this store that I didn't like. And that's part of my personal problem is that if I like somebody personally, I tend to not want to let them go from the business, even if they are disruptive to the team.
Right.
And, that's something that, frankly, again, kudos to Cody. But he hasn't quite earned the nickname the Hammer yet. But he recognizes that if there is one player that's not that's a C player, that really has a detrimental impact on the B players and the A players. And so our decision-making processes become faster. We actually put together a list of sort of the Stonebridge cultural aspects, the important things to us as a culture, and that's part of our survey that we send out to all the employees every twice a year, where they grade each other, and it's really good to see their feedback when making these decisions. And finally, that's the one thing that we're both very much on the same page with. We have been absolutely choosing to, I'd say, pay above market for better talent. That is just so unbelievably beneficial to the group. These are force multipliers. They're not always financial advisors, but they're force multipliers. And they allow your business to grow much faster. And, frankly, I look back 4, 5, 6 years ago where we were making all these decisions and we were doing everything ourselves. And it was miserable. I mean, we were stuck when we were first meeting with you. We were stuck in this quandary of do we stop growing? Do we want to grow? And we made the decision that we're going to hire well and we're going to grow. And we're going to grow out of some of these old problems. And it's not like new problems don't pop up, but you really can grow a practice out of the problems that you were having before by hiring the right people and kind of expanding the responsibility of other people in the practice.
Yeah, and I'd say, there's a number of very good hires that we had, and we keep focusing back on Cody, but Cody was, you can see I've rubbed off on John. He's using military terms like force multiplier now. But Cody was a definite force multiplier, because if you think of, and our practice is not different than any other practice, people who contemplate leaving a wirehouse organization and starting in the independence organization, in the independent financial advisory world, is you add a whole host of things that, frankly, we're entrepreneurial, we're organized, we enjoyed running a business, etc. But that's not what Brian or John. We're not paid by our clients to run a business or run payroll or do the QuickBooks. We're hired by our clients to give them objective and authentic quality advice. So as a result, hiring somebody and maybe even taking a pay cut to get rid of some of those business aspects, and that can be an internal person or that can be an outsourced person. But when you bring somebody onto your team to allow you to make day-to-day decisions, not strategic decisions, but when you allow them to make those day-to-day decisions for you, then you can focus on serving clients, delivering plans, prospecting, presenting, all that stuff that you're supposed to do as a financial advisor. Wow,
that right there, I think in a nutshell, that encompasses the whole conversation. That's unbelievable. So I know in the interest of time, I appreciate you guys doing this. Any final like if someone's listening to this right now, or two guys are listening to this conversation or watching on YouTube on our channel, Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, any advice? Like, what's the one piece of advice you would give two guys that are thinking about becoming partners that they should go into before they sort of, get married together?
It's interesting. as I said before, we had the benefit of working together first and building that trust together first. I'm not sure how the partnership would have worked out without that, because that's what it takes. I mean, we've always been 50-50. We've never actually examined the production that each of us have. So we've been 50-50 for how many years? I don't know. How many years? I mean, forever. That's the level of trust that we built before starting our partnership. And if you don't have that with somebody going into it, it's not going to work. That's really it.
Yeah, I would say that we benefited from the fact that we had the ability to work together, and the input that we offer to the practice is different in terms of tangible and intangible things, but you just have to value that the other person's contribution is equivalent to their ownership. And that doesn't necessarily mean meetings or hours or accounts or production or whatever. Now, we have very similar, but it's not like we have a hugely dissimilar manner in which we produce or whatever, or for that matter, how we invest money. We have very common practices, but it comes down to just knowing that any individual isn't complete by themselves, and you need somebody to complement what you do. And fortunately, we just bumped into each other, and we had time and effort and time to really figure out that we complemented each other and could work together incredibly well. So I know it's not necessarily the case in most partnerships. In the independent world, you're not working with somebody necessarily who isn't a partner or might be a future partner or whatever, but in the wirehouse world, you're working next to people day in and day out. And if you can find somebody in the office that really complements you, then that's probably a good partner if you can work through the differences and value what each other brings.
All right.
I do want to add to that. If it's about money, it's not going to work. I don't think there's ever been a conversation that we've had about money. That's really it. If we were both looking to maximize what was in our pockets, we'd be creating a competitive situation and with each other. And I think that he and I, even when we didn't have this size of practice, we're never focused on money. It was really more focusing on the way we're running the business, on the people we're hiring, on the investment philosophy, on our clients, on, frankly, morality, but it was never about money.
Yeah. Because if you get all those other things right, the money will eventually, a successful business will eventually develop and whatnot. When you invest all those seeds in the ground and you keep watering them and pulling the weeds and doing all the things you need to do to make sure a business grows, it grows. You don't have to worry about it. It eventually happens.
Awesome. I can tell you this, the one I'll say, even into this conversation, because we've never really talked about this kind of stuff, right? What I'm taking away from this is that I'll actually apply to some of the things that I have going on in my company, is how much you actually rely on other people to help you make the decisions around you. That it's not just, and I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they want to go from the wirehouse, or any entrepreneur, they think, I'm the entrepreneur, it's my company, I'm the boss, right? And yes, you guys are the bosses, but clearly you guys are humble enough, and you found that a sort of a group think, right, and a sharing of not sharing responsibility, but a sharing of the decisions, sort of doling out some of that decision-making process to your team has really benefited you guys more than I expected it. So I appreciate you guys sharing all this information. John, I know you gotta get going, so I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I wasn't sure, whether you guys are even back to the office or not. So I appreciate you guys getting back to the office for me at least. Again, I imagine don't even want to know what's below the table there, whether you're in your underwear or your
still my boxer shorts, bud.
Yeah, your pink tutu that you run, you do your charity run with, which is great. So I've yet to see a picture with Brian with the pink tutu on. So don't think I'll see one of those. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. For those of you that were listening, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave comments on our Instagram page. You can go to franklarosa.elite, and you go to our YouTube channel, obviously, at Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Thank you very much, and I look forward to everybody joining us again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out some of our other episodes. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you back here next week.